Plenty going on here. We have talked about it all week long. He has been the biggest topic of conversation around the Pittsburgh Steelers because of plenty of antics that happened in week 5. And I'm ready to move on to them because I'll tell you this, if I know anything about George Pickens, chances are he's going to have a monster game in week 6 so that he can come out here and say something flashy. Like, I kept all the receipts when the receipts are warranted. People should be talking negatively about him right now. And if I had to guess, he's going to just move on. This is no big deal. But he did have plenty to say today, or very little to say today, but plenty in the wrong direction, I would imagine. He addressed the eye black situation, which chances are he's getting fined for. He addressed the slam in the helmet on the ground situation, which I would imagine his words about it, he's getting fined for. And then addressed pretty much everything else that is going on. We're going to pull up a tweet from Brooke Pryor, who caught this on video of George talking about, well, everything that's happened in the last 6-7 days.
Earlier this season, you had some questions, penalties called on you. You had some plays just kind of not go your way. Do you feel like you've gotten better at handling that kind of stuff and just dealing with the ebbs and flows of the game?
I wouldn't really say that. That's all on the refs. So that should show you where the refs are this season.
Definitely getting fined for that. That's one clip of many. When he spoke about the eye black situation, he just said, it's eye black. Nah, I had no idea about the uniform policy. I know for a fact the players are given strict instructions about the uniform policy. I'm also fully aware that half of that sideline knows to go up to him and say, hey, you shouldn't have that on your eye black, but they just quite frankly probably didn't care. We also had to talk about everybody. And that's the part that bothers me about the whole situation, is that I would like this to go away as fast as possible. That's where I stand with George and any other drama that brews with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is, yeah, it's great. We get something to talk about. We have something big and flashy to put in a headline. If it was up to me, it would go away in a day. And it could go away in a day as long as George talks about it. But he doesn't talk about it. And then we got to ask everybody else. So we asked Calvin Austin. Obviously, they talked about it with Pat Freiermuth, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields. Justin had some pretty good stuff to say. We'll hear from him, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You definitely got to feel for him. He's just passionate about the game, like we talked about earlier this year. And, he knows how great of a player he is. And, it's tough. So I think, just talking to him, I try to talk to him on the sideline, keep him up. I think that's the biggest thing, and, keep him going. And just, try to talk to him throughout the whole game and, just stay in his ear and say, we're going to need you to make a big play soon. And, when that happens, we're going to need you. So, just the biggest thing is just being patient and waiting for the ball to come his way, because at the end of the day, defenses know that we're trying to get them the ball, so they're going to game plan and do what they can to try to stop that.
Justin had some good things to say. Russ had some good things to say. Everybody else has some good things to say. I'll say this, okay? I don't think George is going to be fine in this grand scheme of things. I think George is George. I think George is a dude who reports came out last night. He's showing up late to work. I believe it. He's a guy that wears curse words on his eye black, and frankly, I don't care, but there are people out there who do. He's a guy who slams his helmet down, which again, that one doesn't really bother me either, but I think there are people that it does. And he's a guy that has temper tantrums, quite frankly, all the time. And then denies all of it, denies all blame, because that's what he's into. He's not a guy that's going to take accountability for anything. He never has been. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? For me, it's the obvious ones. Death, loss, failure. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears while finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I'm somebody who's benefited from therapy for a long time, and I've been an advocate for therapy for years. And I'm excited to tell you guys about BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. I just look at it like that's who George is. I think we have to come to an agreement that this is who George is, that, okay, let's just accept it and move on. We talked in the offseason a lot about what George's future with the Pittsburgh Steelers looks like. Do you have a different outlook where we sit currently?
The thing is, you would think that coming into this season, a lot of this would have been different, right? In the past, you're saying, all right, these are first and second situations. You would think that now they got rid of Deontay Johnson. George is the guy. Literally, there's no other guys in the locker room. He's the guy. He's going to get the lion's share of the targets. You think he would take that and say, all right, I'm the new leader in this room. Unfortunately, that's not been the case. I mean, I don't know if that was kind of a fool's belief on my part, but I thought that there would be a little bit different this year because I thought that he would see in year 3 that this team is building around him in the passing game. It doesn't look like he cares about that. He's still acting the same way. So I'm a little bit surprised that it has continued this way, and I'm surprised that it's getting worse and not better in the 3rd season of his career.
Yeah, it does not surprise me at all. And it is a fool's belief to believe that, because quite frankly, all the signs were there. Like he didn't take accountability last year when any of this happened. He blamed us. He blamed the media. He blamed everybody talking. This year, he's blaming the refs. He's saying he could care less about the uniform policy. He didn't even know it was a thing. Yeah, he knew it was a thing. You know, he knew it was a thing. Everybody knew it was a thing. It's always been like that's been the train the entire. I mean, it goes back to his college days. This dude's a 1st round pick, probably before Kenny Pickett gets drafted. If he doesn't have attitude issues and problems at Georgia, but he's got attitude issues and problems at Georgia. So that's where we are. I'll say this. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to push it out this season. The whole trade for whatever, get rid of George thing doesn't really make any sense right now because the Pittsburgh Steelers desperately need another wide receiver. Even if you go out and land that wide receiver, you still need George because you need 2 of them. You're not going to just eliminate. You're not going to solve one problem, add another one. That doesn't make any sense. After this season, I have a very, very tough time believing the Pittsburgh Steelers are keeping George around. Very tough time believing that. If you're showing up for work, there are differences here, okay? Antonio Brown is the guy that showed up late to work. And once this report came out, I started making phone calls. Hey, give me I want the scoop of AB. I could care less about George. I want the scoop of what was AB like during this time. He was doing all the same stuff. The difference is Antonio Brown worked harder than any human being in that locker room at all times. That was the thing with Deontay. Deontay worked harder than any human being in that locker room at all times. He had his issues, but he also worked his butt off. George does not work. George does not put in that same work. George is a different person. He was born with the craziest talent of all time, and he's very well aware of it. Do I think George is going to be fine in the NFL? Yes. But if I had to guess, the Pittsburgh Steelers move on from George Pickens this offseason, and I don't really think they care what they get for him. I think they're just looking to move on, which is exciting because the Steelers are going to get 2 wide receivers now instead of just 1. Maybe one of them is Devontae Adams. We'll talk about him in a second here. But at least they're going to have 2 new names in that wide receiver core a year from now, which wide receiver is the most exciting position outside of quarterback. So that's very thrilling. But I have a hard time believing George is here to stay. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are starting to move on from him already. I think they're pretty tired of the situation and where everything stands currently. I think the locker room is potentially starting to turn. I have none of this is fact, but I just get the vibe and have a sense that the Pittsburgh Steelers are ready to move on when it comes to GP. Where that continues, who knows? But for right now, let's put a pin in it. Let's cap it off and say George Pickens drama behind us for right now. If I had to guess, put him in your starting lineup in fantasy football because he's about to have a hell of a weekend. And then he's going to say something slick like, this is everybody else's fault. And then 6 games from now or something, it's going to happen again because that's what happened last time. But it started backwards. It went Kenny Pickett liking posts on Instagram about how Kenny Pickett sucks and saying stuff like that and then deleting all your stuff and lying about it. Let's not act like he didn't lie about all of it. And then it was the big blow up that we had to address everything about. And then it was hey, this is the receipts. This year it's backwards. It'll be the big blow up, boom, and then it'll be little things along the way, potentially with a burner account that is commenting on our George Pickens videos.